Thanks for clicking on my video. I'm Olivia, and I feel like talking about palettes today. So I have a stack of palettes here in front of me that I'm going to share with you today. I just kind of shopped my stash for things that I'm inspired to reach for February in general, but also obviously Valentine's Day. So a lot of these have a theme. It's Valentine's Day. So a lot of these are like berry toned or like kind of pinky red color stories. A lot of these palettes are old, very old, but we don't have to judge on this channel. But I hope I can inspire you to reach for one of these palettes if you have them, or reach for something similar vibe, or reach for whatever you feel like reaching for. Just use some of your old stuff. So the first palette I'm going to mention is the Beauty Bay Love Notes palette. So this is what she looks like. These palettes are a little hefty from Beauty Bay, but I do like the few that I've tried. This one obviously has like more Valentine's theme, which is why I pulled for it. But I do like that it's not just like your standard pink palette. You could go really purple with your look. They have a few neutrals, as they usually do in these palettes, but then they do have the pinky side here. You have a couple deepening shades, so you can go a little more sultry if you want to. But I do really like how there are a few different pastel options too. I've been watching a lot of Angie's videos, and she does a lot of like white inner corners or pastel inner corners. So I've been liking doing that look a lot, and this palette works really well for that kind of look. The second palette I have is the Lunar Beauty Moonspell Volume 2. It is a Halloween palette, but the color story is very Valentine's Day in my opinion. I like that they included a black and then some other deep shades, because you can kind of go like anti-Valentine's or do something really smoky. This palette also gives you a really nice range, kind of like the Beauty Bay one. So you can go a little peachy. They have reds, obviously pinks and purples, with some neutrals scattered in too. So it is a really versatile palette. I actually used this palette relatively recently for a few looks over my birthday. I will say I'm not always drawn to like pinky, purpley tones when I'm doing a more colorful look. I say as I'm wearing those exact colors right now. But anyway, I don't know if it's just like my skin tone or eye color with the shades, or if it's just like the specific undertones of like these pinks and purples. But I love the looks that I did with this palette. I felt really fierce. The tones were just really flattering. I think it's a really beautiful palette overall. It's versatile, like I said. The quality is really nice. And if you have it, I recommend that you pull it out. The next palette I have is the Rosy Jingle palette from Odin's Eye. So this is what she looks like. I know it is a Christmas themed palette, but I feel like this color story, it's giving me like, it is giving me the winter vibes, but it's giving me winter in February vibes because of the playful pinky tones. I really like the bright colors in here. Again, just like the Beauty Bay one, we have the lavender here. We have some neutrals, so it makes it really versatile. I've only used this palette once so far, but I did kind of a bright pastel-y, like pinky blue look. I got a couple compliments on it, and I can't wait to use it more this month. So the next palette I have is the Amethyst for February palette by BH. The palette looks like this, and I'm wearing it today. I filmed this look, so hopefully you will see it in February. Obviously, it's not exactly Valentine's themed, but it is for February. It's the birthstone for February. The color story does still give Valentine's in my opinion. You don't have any punchy pink shades, but you do have these kind of berry purpley tones, and then these softer like rosy neutrals as well. And I had a lot of fun creating this look. All right, the next palette I pulled is an oldie but a goodie. It's the Urban Decay Naked 3. I'm sorry in advance if the mirror decides to fall out. She likes to do that sometimes, keeps me on edge. Obviously the color story is a lot more muted and neutral and toned down. I do kind of like having an option like that, just since I'm usually pulling for like bright pinks or really saturated berry tones. Sometimes I do like something a lot softer, especially for work when I go into the office. So this palette's kind of perfect for that. It's also really nice to pair with other palettes if you have something a lot more saturated, or maybe if you have like those really punchy indie shimmers and then you just need something more basic for like the foundation of your eye look. I really like using palettes like these for that purpose. I feel like these softer dusty pinks are really perfect for like an everyday kind of minimal look for February. Then you also have these gray grungy tones if you want to spice it up a little bit. As I mentioned, I do usually like to pair this with other things depending on the look I'm going for. And one palette that I paired with the Naked 3 is the Urban Decay Naked Cherry. So the palette has a little bit more depth and it offers a little bit more in the way of the berry tones as well as some kind of pinky shades here. I would say the color story overall is still pretty muted, so I do like wearing this often with the Naked 3, like if I'm doing a look for work, for example. I feel like they pair really nicely. I do really like that they have some deeper mattes in this palette. I know my issue and a lot of people's issues with some of the Naked palettes is the darkest shade or the two darkest shades are always shimmers, but I feel like they did a pretty good job with this palette. It goes pretty dark and pretty light in both mattes and shimmers. So yeah, I feel like it's a pretty well-rounded palette and I encourage you to pull it out this month. So I have a couple of ColourPop palettes. So we're gonna start with the palette that was in my basket of shame. This is the ColourPop Flirty Talk palette. Obviously a very Valentine's themed palette. So this is what the palette looks like. I'm embarrassed that I haven't used it yet and it makes me sad because it's beautiful. But that is why she's in the rotation. Again, I feel like it's pretty obvious why I reached for this one for February/Valentine's Day. The theme is obviously pretty on point. I'm loving the red, pink, and white color story. I do think the palette is missing like a really deep burgundy shade or maybe a black just to kind of make it a little more well-rounded and a little more versatile. But either way, it's a really beautiful palette and I'm inspired to finally reach for it. The next palette I have is the Not a Box of Chocolates from ColourPop. Obviously, this is a very Valentine's themed palette because it's chocolate. Clearly, you're not getting your typical red, pink color story. So I wanted to pull this palette into my rotation for that reason. Also, I feel like it's perfect for an everyday look or something really sultry. Shades go pretty deep, so I feel like you can get a really sexy look out of this. You don't always have to go red, pink, or purple for Valentine's. I feel like if you're doing like a little date night, something like this would also be really perfect for that too. And like, how cute are the little imprints? So cute. So the last ColourPop palette that I wanted to feature today is very old, and you'll have to let me know if you were around the makeup space when this palette came out. This is the She palette, and it was a collab between ColourPop and Kuchi. And this is what the color story looks like. To me, it feels like a very romantic color story. I really like how the purple and pinky shades are very like muted and dusty almost. I feel like there's a lot of unique undertones in this palette and I really like reaching for this from time to time. I kind of wish ColourPop would like maybe bring some of these older palettes back. I feel like this palette's so beautiful. They also had the Good Sport palette that I missed out on. But yeah, they had a lot of bangers. But yeah, and again, I'd love to know if you remember this palette. All right, so I felt like I had to put an ABH palette in here. The Modern Renaissance is a classic that would definitely fit into this video, but I kind of felt more compelled to reach for the Norvina for this video. I don't know if maybe the purpley vibes are more trendy lately, or I just felt like it for whatever reason, but this is the Norvina palette. This is what she looks like, and like a lot of the other palettes we've already talked about, I really like the softer tones in this. I feel like the couple pops of purple and periwinkle, the pinks, a lot of P sounds. But I feel like this color story is really nice for February, just like the other palettes as well. I like that you can go a little more neutral. You can also go really sultry with this side of the palette right here. I know this palette is a little dated, just like all the other ones I pulled out for this video, but I still like reaching for it. I feel like the shimmers are really beautiful in this palette. And again, this color story is just something I'm kind of gravitating to this time of the year. So I have 3 more palettes to talk about. They're all from Natasha Denona. I'll start with the oldest gal we have here, and it is the Lila palette. Lila, the debate continues, I'm not sure. This is what this palette looks like. Obviously a lot of pinky berry tones. There's a lot of kind of rosy neutrals like I've mentioned in other palettes too that I really like for this time of year. I feel like anytime I see this palette on beauty YouTube, it's usually someone decluttering it or just kind of shitting on it. Obviously her formulas have been updated since this palette came out, but I still like reaching from this from time to time. I feel like the undertones of some of these shimmers are so beautiful and they're almost kind of grungy, at least for these 3 right here. This palette is perfect for, again, maybe like a grungier or sultry look, but still kind of in the theme of Valentine's Day or February. I personally still reach for this sometimes. I don't hate it. Please let me know that I'm not alone. So the next palette I have here is the Natasha Denona Mini Crush palette. She's definitely done a couple of these mini palettes in the Valentine's theme. I do have the Mini Love, but I felt like reaching for this one today. But I feel like that palette and this one are pretty interchangeable. And I mean, they're pretty basic. You have 5 shades, they're pinky purpley tones. There's only gonna be like 1 or 2 looks you can really do with this, but it is kind of perfect for grabbing something small. You don't really have to think too hard about the look you're gonna do. And it's a cute little option for the season. Right, so I'm gonna show you the last palette, hopefully before my phone dies. Since I was basic enough to do a video about Valentine's Day themed palettes, I obviously had to be a basic bitch, and I pulled the Natasha Denona Love palette. This is what this palette looks like. It's very Valentine's themed. You got the reds, the pinks, you have purples, you have some smokier shades here if you want to do something really sultry again. I do like how the palette again goes from like really deep shades. You have some brighter options as well. You can go a little more colorful, but also pretty neutral. I'm not gonna lie, I haven't reached for this palette very much, probably just a few times. Something about this color story throws me off a little bit, and I feel like I don't always think to use it. But the few times I have used it, I always really like how the look turns out. So I especially wanted to reach for this palette and get it in my February palette rotation, just to show it some more love. So yeah, those are all the palettes I'm hoping to kind of reach for this month. If there's a palette that I highlighted today that you'd like to see a look with or get a little more inspiration to use, let me know, and then I could film my next video with that palette. Let me know if you have any of these palettes or something similar. I hope I've inspired you to shop your stash. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!